Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you a book review of a book I have literally spent all summer and half of the fall reading, and that is Homeland by R.A. Salvatore. It is the first book in the Legend of Drizzt series, but before we get into the review, let me quick introduce myself. My name is Nicole Wolf. I'm a paranormal romance writer and mommy of two adorable little kiddos, and here on my channel I talk about all things book related and writing related, and there's a couple of life related things in there, you know, like mommy stuff and thrifting. And so if you're interested in any of that kind of stuff, make sure to hit that like and the subscribe and little bell so you know when I post new videos. So without further ado, let's get into this book review. Okay, so to get started, let me tell you a little bit about this book. Homeland was originally published in 1990 by R.A. Salvatore. And it is I want to say it's probably a traditional or epic fantasy style book or fantasy adventure style book. It follows, obviously, the main character, Drizzt, who is a drow elf or dark elf. And this book one, because it doesn't actually have a blurb or an actual synopsis on the back, it just has a quote from the main character. I don't really want to give you a synopsis because then I'm ruining the book. So I guess I just have to give you spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. This book starts with basically a battle between his family's house and another family's house while his mother is giving birth to him. And that's how the book opens. And then it kind of goes into some of the politics of the world. And then it follows his journey in his homeland, which is Menzoberranzan. So, it goes through his upbringing while he's at home, and then it goes through his years training with the sword master Zaknafine, and then it goes through his time at the academy for melee, and then it goes through his time after he graduates the academy, and he's kind of part of the scouting party where they go out into the tunnels and kill the monsters that are out in the tunnels that are trying to invade Menzoberranzan, I guess. Anyway, so I'm gonna go through. I have this nifty little book called the Book Club Journal, and I finally got to fill it in. And the thing that I like about this book is that you could actually keep all of your notes in this book. It has everything that you need for book reviews, which is lovely. So I read this book, or I picked up this book because it was already in my house, because this is my husband's favorite series ever in the world. So because it's his favorite series, I wanted to know what the big deal was. So I picked it up and I started reading it. And me and him do have we both enjoy fantasy and paranormal and stuff like that. So that's why I was willing to pick it up and read it. So anyway, I started this book on May 1st of 2021. And I finished it on October 9th, 2021. That's how long it took me to read this book, which is May, June, July, August, September. A little over 5 months. Is how long it took me. Obviously, you can see I read the paperback version. And then it has, so I'm going to go over how I rate things. I rate the writing style. I rate the relatability. I rate the originality, the characters, the pacing, the world building, the readability, the personal impact, and the plot. And then I give it an overall rating. Okay, so that's kind of how I rate the different categories. Okay, so let's start with the writing style. For writing style, I actually gave this book 5 stars. And the reason I gave it 5 stars is you could tell he's a really well-read writer. He knows how to convey what he's trying to get across on the page. And he does it in a way that fits this world really well. So I really did enjoy the writing style of this. It wasn't overly, you know, like pretentious where you're like tripping over words all the time, and it wasn't like, I don't know how to say it, but like where you're also not tripping over words because they're too difficult, but then sometimes you're tripping, like you're constantly pulled out of the book, either because you're coming across words that you don't recognize all the time, or you're tripping across stuff because the grammar or the word flow is just so bad and choppy. Like that happens to me a lot with not well-written books where I'm constantly, like if I find myself proofing it as I'm reading it, that's not good. Like I shouldn't have to do that. Okay, so anyway, writing style, I got 5 stars. Relatability, which basically means how well did I relate to the characters, or how well did I relate to the story or the world, anything like that. This only got 2 stars. And the reason it only got 2 stars is because I didn't relate to anybody really. I didn't relate to the world. I didn't relate to the story. I didn't relate to any of the characters. And now I understand this is a fantasy. Like there are drow elves that live underground where there's no light. Like I understand you can't really get super relatable with that. But in every fantasy novel, no matter what the novel is really about, you usually find some kind of relatability in the story. And I just never had that. I never had any sense of, I could relate to his struggle type of thing. But Originality, which is the next one, that one I gave 5 stars again, because I will say this is a really original story. And the world that he's building in this story, because this is the first book, so this is where he's starting to build the world out. It's a really original idea. And the characters are very original, because I've never come across a world like this, with this kind of political system and this kind of, like religious system, and like, it's all there. Okay, so characters, I gave 3 stars. I gave characters 3 stars because he does have a wide variety of characters. But the reason I gave it 3 stars is most of the characters are extremely one-dimensional, meaning you don't really get any sense of they don't feel like full, like people, like regular people. Like they feel like they're there to fulfill a purpose, and that's it. And the only ones that have any kind of roundedness to them is Drizzt, who's the main character, and maybe Zach. But on the whole, I didn't find the characters super well developed. But it's book 1. There's 12 more books. So I don't know if that changes as the books come along. I just knew in this first book, the characters didn't really feel real to me. The pacing, I only gave 1 star. And that is because this book took me 5 months to read. And that was like a long time for me. Like I usually, once I decide to pick up a book, it usually doesn't take me long to read it. Like 2-3 days maybe is how long it takes me. It's me getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I want to read a book. And I pick up the book and I try. And my problem is, if I pick up a book that I know I'm going to get sucked into. I'm afraid to pick up a book at night sometimes because I'm afraid if I get sucked into it, which happens a lot, I will not go to sleep. I will be up till 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning, or I will read the whole book until it's daytime, and then I didn't get any sleep. So there were times that I didn't want to pick up books at night, but this book I did we started reading this at night because me and my husband started reading this together at night before bed, and I didn't have a problem with that. There was absolutely no problem with me picking up this book and being afraid I was going to get so sucked into the story that I wouldn't be able to put it down and go to sleep. I did not have that problem with this book at all. In fact, there were times that I was laying in bed and I was like, do I really want to pick up this book and keep going? Like, it was a little bit of a struggle for me to get through this book because obviously it took me 5 months to do it. So pacing was not so good, in my opinion. There was a lot of lulls, and there was a lot of parts of the book that just, I didn't care. I didn't care about what happened. I didn't care what was going to happen next, I guess it would be the problem. The world building I gave 5 stars because I will say Salvatore was extremely good at building his world, being thorough enough to make the world feel real. That I will say. The world that he put these characters in felt very real. The characters just didn't feel real. The characters felt like, I don't know, little paper dolls going around this very extravagant world, if you know what I mean. Because he made it easy to grasp all of those little things that go into world building, like the political system, the religious system, the social system, the class, like the classes and how power transfers within this world and, things like that. So I will say he did a really good job building the world, making it easy to understand, even though it is a completely different everything. The world is different, the government's different, the political system's different, the religious, everything's different than what we would be used to, but he made it easy to understand and he made it where it makes sense going together. Okay, and then readability, again, I gave 5 stars because even though this is a fantasy, and fantasies are known for slightly harder reading, like higher reading levels, you're more often to come across strange words or words you have to look up. I didn't have that problem. I think this book was easy to read. The readability was easy. Like, I didn't struggle to read it, and I didn't struggle to comprehend it. It was just the pacing that dragged me down. So personal impact was again 1 star. Because it had 0 personal impact on me. When I was finished reading this book, I was relieved that I was finished reading this book. Because I didn't care. I didn't care about anybody. There's nobody in this book that I cared enough about to even want to see what happens at the end. I mean, and I read through it because I was like, I wanted to finish the book, to say that I finished it, and to let you guys know what I thought. Because it's a book 1 of a series. But yeah, it had no impact on me. It's not like I felt no emotions at all while I was reading it. Okay, and then plot, I gave 3 stars. I gave 3 stars in plot because, as I said before, some parts of the plot felt unnecessary and dragged on, and I didn't know why it was there. Other parts of the plot I got. Like, I could easily see the points that were connecting each other and making the whole story arc. And, and some parts were slightly more, drew me in a little bit more. The part where he goes to the academy, I found that was a part that I seemed to read through a little faster. And then right at the end, like we're talking about like the last 2-3 chapters, again, there was a sequence of plot events that happened that were more exciting. It should be. It's a climax. that you could see this plot, this plot, this plot, they all connect. Like you cannot have these plots happening without the first part and the plot, you know, the plot points earlier in the book. Like all of that had to happen before this would make sense. So that's why I gave it 3 stars, just because the plot made sense. It was just, there were lulls in the plot. And there were parts in the plot that didn't seem to really be necessary, and it didn't seem like it was really moving the story forward in any exciting way, let's say. Okay, so my overall rating that I gave this book was 3 stars. And the reason I did that is because I don't want to say I hated this book, because I didn't hate it. I don't want to say I loved it, because I definitely didn't love it. It was okay. You know, it was okay. Like, okay, I read it, and now I'm done, and there was, like, there's just no, like, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like, oh my God, I can't believe I just spent 5 months of my life reading this stupid book. Like, I'm not, like, at that point. But I'm also not, like, I'm so happy that I took the time to read this book either. Like, it's very, like, meh. To quote my daughter. That's, like, her favorite thing to say is meh. Anyway, now that I'm finished with my ratings, and I gave you my rating, which is 3 stars. Keep in mind, I am not a fantasy book reader. I don't read epic fantasy or high fantasy or whatever you want to call it. I don't read that stuff. And this book reminded me why I don't read that stuff. It's because that genre of story is known for big gaps in plot. Like just filler, or like giant sections of nothing but world building. I loved the world building. It was really well done. And that's probably why. It's because there were chunks of it. Like, you're going to have a good detailed world building if you're dedicating pages of it at one time. Anyway, I don't read books like that because I can't stand just pages of world building and description and stuff like that. Do you need to go out? Oh my Lord, I will be right back. I'm back with coffee this time. Anyway, so keep that in mind with my ratings, with my, why did my light go out? Oh geez, God. Just need a little light. Okay. Where was it? Oh, keep that in mind with my ratings. I am not a typical fantasy, high fantasy reader. So let me get to my analysis now. Would I read it again? No, I would not. Would I recommend it? Yes, with a caveat. If you are a fan of fantasy adventure, high fantasy, you get the gist, that stuff, I absolutely recommend that you read this book. Because I've heard what those types of readers really gravitate towards, and this book has all of those things that those kind of readers gravitate towards, which is probably why it is such a popular series. I mean, it even says on it, the New York Times bestselling classic. I mean, it's even considered a classic now, apparently. I mean, but it was published in 1990, so that doesn't surprise me. So if you are a fan of high fantasy adventure, this is definitely a book I recommend you read. If you're not, if you're a fan of like urban fantasy or more like traditional action adventure, thriller, things like that, this is going to be way too slow of a read for you, because you are like, those types of readers are used to very fast-paced plots and stories. And if you're like me, I'm traditionally a romance, or definitely paranormal romance or urban fantasy, leaning towards closer to the romance. So I don't know what you call that. I just call it paranormal romance, but it's like paranormal romance with like slightly more action in it, like an urban fantasy, but still focused on the romance. Then I don't recommend this because this, again, there's no romance in it. If you're a romance reader, there's zero romance in this. So if all you read is romance, don't bother. And then I have some notes, which is it had exceptional world building. The characters were hard to relate to due to it had like muted emotions, like, and that could have just been part of the world build, like part of that culture was don't show emotion unless it's anger. So they really weren't supposed to feel any kind of emotion, or they were supposed to mask their emotions. And very distant relationships. There were no close relationships in this book. Like, it was very much a lone wolf story. So if you're into those kind of books, lone wolf kind of stories, this is definitely for you. I mean, I don't mind lone wolves if it's in a romance, because then they're not lone wolves anymore. But that's not the case in this book. This is a really long video. I'm going to hope I could cut it down a little bit. And if you're still with me, make sure you leave a comment below and hit that like button and let me know that you're still with me. And let me know if you're planning on picking up this book. If you're already like, nope, I am completely out. Let me know if you've already read it. If you read it before I did. I would love to start. I love talking books. So I would love to start a discussion about what you thought about this book that was different than what I thought. Or were there parts that you agreed on that, you know, you were like, yeah, that's kind of what I thought when I read it. Let me know in the comments, because I'd love to start a discussion. Book club. I got a book club journal, so and stay tuned, because I'm going to be posting a video announcing what my next book club read is. You could read it with me, or you could just, if you've already read it, you could do what we're doing now, where I review it and then we talk about it in the comments. Which is kind of why I wanted to start this kind of like book club review series. It's more so I have a motivation to read more books, and I have somewhere to talk books with other people who like to talk books. So make sure to hit the comments below and let me know what you guys thought. And if you guys have any book recommendations for future book club reads, post those in the comments as well. And that is all for me today, guys. I will see everybody in my next video. Bye.